Hello and welcome to Fireside Chats with Leo Rodman, featuring your host, Leo Rodman.
Hello, everybody. So good to have you with us today. I'm your host, Leo Rodman, and with me today is Liliana. Liliana, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, everybody. My name is Liliana Baxter. I am a huge AI enthusiast, working towards being an AI specialist, both in my personal life and with my contracted work with Intuit. But I believe we'll get into that in just a minute. So I'm going to hand it back to Leo.
So what kind of work do you do at Intuit? I assume you've been in learning and development for quite some time now?
Actually, I am career-wise, I have always just been in general tech, and then a few years ago, I sort of formalized it as to being a data analyst. So that's what I'm primarily doing it into it. But they opened up what they like to call Gen AI company-wide. They opened that up to everyone. So I have been using their Gen AI tools to be making different types of models, using their version of what is basically Chat GPT to help with processes and other verbiage, and not exactly copy because I'm not on the marketing team, but what we could just call copy. So,
Yes. Yeah. So are they using like Microsoft Azure or?
they are using on the back end, I think it's Azure, but it's I'm not gonna say exactly what it is because I'm not on that specific team.
Yeah, we're a Microsoft vendor, actually. There's like a billion Microsoft products. Honestly, it's impossible to keep up. Um,
Right, yes, and they keep rolling them out and naming them new and new things, so
yeah. So what are some ways that you're currently using AI at work? You mentioned a little bit, but what do you think are some of the top use cases?
sure. So we have a lot of sales teams that I work with and that my group works with. And so we're trying to make them a compendium for everything that they kind of scramble to look up different. We have information everywhere. There, Google Sheets, there's the wiki pages, there's internal intranet, there's some stuff on the external internet. They just have a myriad of tools that they have to look up and keep track of. So we're hoping to give them a better, more singular central knowledge base for that. So that's kind of what I'm working on. What I've seen other people working on, I mean, it is the slew. It's everything from making QuickBooks and TurboTax more intuitive and answering deeper, more interesting questions so that you can get better tax returns, or, get your business adjusted so that they can take advantage of certain tax incentives. I mean, it's a slew of things. I've seen everybody doing almost anything you can think of with AI, and I try to keep up with it. But our internal AI is sort of like external AI. There's just too much news and information to ingest as one person, but it's some cool stuff, and I'm hoping to get into more projects as the year rolls on.
That's really cool. Do you think that it has a potential to be a real job replacer, like people are saying, or it's more of a tool?
I don't think right now in its current iteration it's a job replacer. It might be more for like people who have small teams. They would have to have a smaller staff because that staff could work more effectively, more efficiently. Um, I love to think that companies would do the right thing and hire those people for a good amount of money because they have these new tools and these new skills, and that companies would not be the type that would go, oh, we're just going to replace the whole department with AI, because that's not going to work very well for them, because AI, I don't think, is in a place to replace most people. You still want quality control, basically. And you still want a human being directing what is coming out of AI for the most part. So for right now, in the first, at least, the next couple of years, I would say 5 years at least, I don't know that people are going to be firing huge batches of people because of AI. They might use it as an excuse, but I don't think it's going to be a very legitimate excuse. Because I think we're still going to need the creativity. We're going to need the oversight. We're going to need the collaboration between people. So I just don't see it being like an epidemic or something like that that sweeps through industries just yet.
Okay, well, you say just yet, but that means that you would say maybe it's possible 30, 50 years from now. I mean, who knows? But
Right, yeah. At that point, you've gotten to the what is it, the event horizon, and we just can't see into the future past that. So yeah.
yeah, no, I agree. I think for now it's a tool. I think there will be people who lose jobs mostly because they don't brush up on their AI. But other than that, I just think it'll be a lot like computers and the internet, where all of a sudden everyone is expected to have 5 times as much work product output in the same time period as before. So definitely higher standards. But I think that's good for everyone. Do you think it's going to hurt the ability of kids to learn to write?
Well, here's the thing. Do we I think it's what we focus on at that point. Like
Mhm.
we've already kind of in this country, I think, done away with cursive. So
It made me
are
work so
we
hard at that, and I was like, no one's going to be writing cursive in 20 years, lady. 20.
right? Though everybody who ever sees my writing is like, "Oh, it's so pretty, it's so beautiful." And I'm like, "Yeah, because they drilled this into me." Like I don't know if you remember this, but
Or
it was hard.
wedding invitations, still a job, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, you get those Etsy people and they're making millions of dollars on custom calligraphy invitations.
Mm.
Um, I don't know because that assumes that there is enough resources and they are distributed fairly that there aren't some people still writing in notebooks. Also, there's something that's just more tangible to the human brain, and there have been studies on this about people writing out notes. There's just something that we're hardwired. You remember it better. It's a better system. Like even in Intuit, we're going around and everybody's supposed to share their productivity hacks. And it's like, do you use Outlook? Do you use this? Do you use that? Most of us know it's a software company, but most of us are still using pen and paper just because there's something hardwired to that. So is
I finally
everybody
gave
going to
up
get an
pen and paper
iPad?
this year, but for a long time, I've been a big Moleskine notebook person.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then like, you get into your favorite pens and all that kind of stuff when you get into that. Yeah. So I don't know that we're going to do that because first off, you have to get everybody something that they can type on. So are they all going to do it on their phone or,
well,
how do
will they
we
even write on their phone if an AI can do it for them? Some people say kids are going to lose like grammar. I think it's going to be the opposite, that people will see all these really well written essays and get better at that particular creative skill set. But a lot of teachers are certainly afraid that every assignment's just going to be turned in by ChatGPT.
I think no, there's a big fear that yeah, they will just have ChatGPT doing that. But then I've heard the argument for the opposite is then you have them come in with handwritten essays and things like that because what are you going to do? You're going to have ChatGPT write you a 30-page paper and then you're going to hand transcribe it. Like you could have at that point just written it yourself. So
Well, that's never been anything to deter cheating. People are always willing to put more effort into cheating than the actual work to do the learning. But at least that's a life skill. They're learning something. Like if they figure out how to get ChatGPT into an earpiece, like they might, not be the best writer in the world, but they'll probably get some kind of cool job at Google afterward. So
yeah, there'll always be a way to cheat at that point, but also if you're going to put that much effort into cheating, like you said, that's its own skill set at some point. I mean, you've outsmarted something. There's something going on upstairs. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I definitely think that the intelligence will actually rise for the people who want to use it in a productive manner. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for this, but like Jordan Peterson always brings up the statistic about like 12% of the population isn't smart enough to get into the army. So there's always going to be like a certain percentage of the population who's just, they were never going to get it. And I don't mean they can't operate, AI or something like that, but they were never going to use it to make themselves smarter because being smarter just isn't on their radar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has potential. I think that like YouTube, for example, a lot of people learn stuff on YouTube, and it might be like how to fix their car radiator, but they learned something, right?
Right.
Um, and typical school and typical test taking, not necessarily for everyone. I do
Right.
though, think that potentially AI, has a use case and a place in almost any job. Like recently, I've tried coming up with prompts for things like farmers, security guards, and you'd be surprised. Like there are potential use cases almost everywhere
Yes.
in terms of ideation, organization.
Yeah. And I think as long as people are open to doing that, again, I think the IQ is going to go up, except for a very small margin of people who just really aren't all that interested in learning and growing and developing in general.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, if you imagine a bell curve, that was always going to be part of the population. There were always going to be people who wanted to be as advanced as possible, and the people who were like, these books, I don't know. So, but we'll get a lot more people all along the curve because access to education is like the doors are just flung open. There's no more gatekeeping at that point. As long as you can get to some sort of phone or a device or whatever, you can start communicating with that. So,
Yeah. Do you think that human teachers' days are numbered, that potentially those human teachers will be replaced completely with AI chatbots?
that's an it. Well, okay. How then we have to kind of have a political ask about that because then you got to think about teachers unions and how your government structured and lobbyists and that gets into a bigger question around that. Now, do I think that
I mean,
there's going to
there's
be
a teacher shortage, right?
there is a teacher shortage, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the teachers who are already there are like, hold on, let's sunset this whole project. I mean, there's still probably going to be, I mean, there's going to be teachers in their 20s and they don't want their job to just slowly fade over the next decade. So I think it's going to start, no matter what career you're in, I think AI is going to start some very interesting legal battles just to keep some of these careers alive, whether or not they should be. I don't know. I can't really speak to that.
I'm sure the
I
biggest fight will be in medicine because there's a strong lobby and there's a pretty reasonable argument that maybe AI could be scary there. But ultimately, I think even in medicine, it belongs.
Oh yeah. I mean, they've already found was it like at least one antibiotic that they would have never found that can treat a wide range of illnesses and symptoms and things like that. So, I mean, definitely in medicine, I think every time that I get on one of these AI events, there's always like a doctor who's telling us about the marvels of AI working with this. You can connect it to brain patterns, you can read that, you can have them intuit thoughts and visual patterns, things like that. So it's going to be everywhere. I just see that there's probably going to be a lot of legal blockades in the early days, sort of like we're seeing with
I mean, more with special interest groups.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, especially in the US. I don't know about internationally because there's already enough stuff to follow in the US
Oh, it's
with
going to be a whole
AI.
minefield when we look at international regulations on the same thing across. I mean, hopefully the EU at least will make it so that there'll be US rules and there'll be EU rules, and that'll cover a large number of countries. But
Right, yeah, a swath of them, yeah.
good news for
So
lawyers.
yes. Yeah, who knew? Definitely. Which is interesting because, it's we've had the news that it passes the bar, it does all this, and then we had that interesting news where the lawyer tried to use it to win a case and it went all horribly wrong on him and you're just like, yeah, that's because you should do due diligence on this. It's
You gotta
not the
check your
tool
work.
that yeah, it's not the tool that's immediately going to replace everyone. Like I was saying, like you still need someone doing quality control on this before you just presume it's all correct. So it's
Yeah,
interesting. But yeah.
it'll be very interesting to see what comes next. Well, that's about time for us today. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And thanks everyone for watching. We appreciate it, or listening. Take care now.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.